We haven't had to invest extra money. We'd already allocated just over $1 billion for this project. So what we have been able to do though is bring that money forward and accelerate it. So rather than have that extra 2 years to deal with stage 2, the planning work is already underway and construction will finish 2 years ahead of schedule. So it's not an extra investment, but it is bringing money forward to make sure that we're able to complete it earlier than anticipated.
So that was money already in the budget, and it's not part of the COVID infrastructure
No,
fund.
but it's important to know that in terms of, without getting too technical, in terms of profiling, it is bringing the money forward. So it means we will be spending more in those earlier years than what we'd anticipated. But because we have brought forward a $3 billion acceleration fund during COVID, it means we can identify some projects and bring them forward. And clearly this is one of those. So it does mean we'll be spending the money quicker because we'll be able to complete the project sooner. No, because the Treasurer has managed to identify the $3 billion we actually brought forward, we are not intending to delay anything by bringing things forward. Quite the contrary. What we have seen in recent months, unfortunately, is a dip in private investment. So if we are serious about creating jobs and pushing jobs, we need to make sure the government redoubles its efforts in our infrastructure pipeline. And that's why this project is so significant. Not only will stage 2 be delivered to the community earlier than expected, it will also provide literally hundreds of jobs. I think Mohammed said that on this stage 1, there's between 400 and 500 people directly employed in this building alone. And obviously the planning work for stage 2 is commenced and will be accelerated. So it's not just about providing the end product, which will be amazing. It's also about keeping local economies going, supply chains going. And we also know that in these types of projects, we do want to rely on supplies provided by Western Sydney businesses in secondary and tertiary jobs that are created as well. So it's good news all round.
Do you see the risk, though, that this project coming forward, but all the other ones that you have mentioned as being brought forward, is going to put pressure on the market and push supply prices up, but then leave the budget lower?
Oh, look, there's no doubt that whenever we accelerate a project or put more on our list to do, it always increases the risk. But what we do need to do is fill the gap. Unfortunately, private investment, for obvious reasons, has fallen off. And that's why if we're serious about jobs creation and keeping the economic stimulus going during COVID, the government has to play a larger role. And we do that because with projects like this, we do rely on the private sector to support us and help us. So whilst they're not initiating their own dollars to invest, what they are doing is partnering with us. So we don't see a clogging of the market in terms of the private sector involvement. What we do see is an opportunity for the private sector to win contracts and then have those subcontractors then be able to provide supplies through local business chains. So. Yeah, I mentioned this morning at a forum that I was at that unfortunately we've thrown away the old chestnuts of budget surpluses, AAA credit ratings and all those things. What we need to focus on is making sure that not only that we get through the pandemic as safely as possible, that we keep jobs going, that families don't suffer unnecessary stress because they're worried about one or two members of the household losing their jobs. And I know going into next year that is playing on a lot of people's minds. It's not just the stress of the disease, which we're managing well, but it's jobs prospects. And especially in March, once JobKeeper runs out, our state is preparing for that. We have to. It's inevitable that, unfortunately, if we don't prepare for that, the job losses will be massive. And I don't want families, especially over Christmas, stressing about what the new year is going to bring for them. I want people to feel more confident and feel that they have their job prospects, and if they have to change jobs, that they have the skills or are able to have the skills to retrain, and that's really important.
Because those stewards now in the planning stages, can you commit to, for stage 2, a hyper-local procurement strategy that will see what you need to build this?
Yeah, well, obviously the procurement strategy already embeds in that incentives for local contractors and suppliers to be involved. In fact, in a lot of our projects, there's local steel companies and others in Western Sydney who we do supply product and services from. But more than ever, we are relying on local suppliers, and that will keep the economy going. And it's not just the primary suppliers, but then those that supply them. And even when you have 500 workers on site, they've all got to grab their lunch and use various facilities in the local area. So there's no doubt that a project of this scale creates economic stimulus locally, which is what we want. But more importantly, we know the end product will be amazing for the local residents.
Could you just clarify today's cases? You mentioned the local cases are all from the one household. Is there an indication that they are linked to one of the costs?
Potentially. Health hasn't confirmed that yet. The 3 cases are in southwestern Sydney. and there are some venues that are common to certain other cases, but I'll let health confirm that before I do, Clinton, just to be for the case of accuracy. But I'm confident health will be able to source those 3 cases to an existing cluster.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to clarify, because New South Wales Health has actually tweeted that there are 4 new locally acquired cases.
Oh, yes, sorry, there was one which came in after 8 p.m. So until 8 p.m. there were 3, and there's one other that's come in overnight, yeah, which will be included in tomorrow's numbers, yeah. No, from what I understand, they're from the same household, yeah. That's my understanding, yep. They're 4 family members of the same household.
Are you concerned with what you're seeing in Victoria with the reopening of the city now, and the lack of QR codes, the lack of apparently getting ahead of what is needed to do in terms of reopening the border to Victorians? How much does that delay what you're seeing, the evidence?
Yeah. What we need to see is evidence that once the so-called Ring of Steel is open in Melbourne, and once restrictions are eased, the impact of what those easing of restrictions means. And that is really the critical decision-making process for New South Wales. We know that when you're in a lockdown, it's easy to control the virus. The real test is once you ease those restrictions, and it takes at least 2 weeks for us to see what that will do. We are the only state that has such intense COVID-safe plans for businesses, for community events and community gatherings. We're very proud of that. And we would have hoped that other states would have built their resilience during periods of borders being up or lockdowns. We need to be sensible about this. I've also received economic advice about the benefit of New South Wales being open up to the rest of Australia and New Zealand and possibly other international jurisdictions versus the risk of being exposed to cases from Victoria. I don't want to see the border up a day longer than it needs to be, but we also need to be sensible. We need to see Victoria demonstrate that they have the capacity to get on top of any outbreaks, because there will be. Once you ease restrictions, there will 100% be outbreaks. And the real test is, how do you deal with that? Are you able to control them? Are you able to find the sources of those infections? And once we see evidence of that, for about two or three weeks after the restrictions are eased, well, then we'll rely on the health advice.